Hello, I'm Kevin, and today we will be talking about game design. In today's lecture, we're mostly going to be talking about what game design is and the three main game principles. Now first, what is game design? Game design is the use of art to create a game for some purpose. It can be entertainment, education, testing something, testing some code, trying out different art styles. A game can be for any purpose, but it has to have a purpose. Game design is basically uses goals and challenges and rules. All games have these, whether it be Pokemon, Spore, which is to create a civilization, Mario Maker, or even Civ. And you typically want to choose a theme and art style to follow throughout the entire game. So that way it doesn't look funny or is weird, right? But for the most part, game design doesn't have any hard rule sets about making a game. It's just about practices that people generally follow. The three main game principles. This is normally what people look at when they build around. These are the things that people follow when they're making a game. All games have a core game mechanic, have some way to reward the player, and tend to be easy to learn, hard to master. There are some exceptions, but these are the things that games typically end up following in order to become a good game. Now, core game mechanic. This is something that is done, but gamified. It can be running, it can be pressing a button or attacking, something that visual, a control, but gamified. Sonic runs, for example, but he runs very fast in his games. That's something we don't normally see. Then, also, a core game mechanic is also built around throughout the entire game and is constantly showing up. Pokemon, for example, does this. Pokemon has a turn-based RPG system where you select an attack or something else to do, like throw a Pokeball, to attack an opponent, to deal damage, and to potentially catch the Pokemon if that's what your goal is. Now, we don't just see the same attack be used by every Pokemon, and it's just a numbers game at that point. We see that they add different attacks and that they have different abilities to them, as well as this mechanic showing up constantly throughout the story and throughout most gameplay. But this doesn't just apply for console games or handheld games, it also applies for mobile games like Puzzles and Dragons. Although we don't normally see mobile games as games, mobile games have become very big in recent society, in a lot of game culture. Puzzles and Dragons, for example, takes these heroes that you have, or creatures that you have, and through matching tiles, through connecting matching tiles, you can deal damage or even heal these creatures to get through a dungeon. And this is just a game mechanic, right? Matching tiles, that's the game mechanic, and they change it by having these matching tiles actually help you progress in a dungeon by dealing damage. Now, building around the core game mechanic. We always want to come up with a good game mechanic. Normally, we build a game mechanic from the ground up, and we have variants to keep it interesting. Again, with Pokemon, we have typing, right? A water type move is going to be super effective against a ground type Pokemon, and we can use this to our advantage and add strategy. It adds depth to the game. This doesn't just apply for games like Pokemon, of course. I would say that it also applies for games like Call of Duty and Monster Hunter World. In Monster Hunter World, certain weapons or certain types of weapons deal more damage to certain creatures. That doesn't mean you have to beat the creature with that weapon, but it just helps. And in Call of Duty, not everyone plays the same way, so maybe your strategy won't work for the same person every single time. Of course, there are still metas, but we'll get into that a little bit later. In fact, we'll get into that right now. The game is easy to learn and hard to master. This is what makes people spend hours on a game, right? Because if it's easy, that means people can pick it up easily, and figure it out. And they don't really need to be told what to do all the time. And hard is associated with its depth, how much it takes to actually figure out the nuances and master the game. I think fighting games are really good for this, because in Smash, for example, it's very easy to pick up a controller, learn how to jump, how to punch. But then it gets harder to figure out what attacks are best for your character, how to maximize your character's potential, as well as perfect block and wave dash. These are things that give depth to the game. because I can learn how to fight in Smash. Anyone can learn how to fight, but not everyone can learn how to properly combo and defend against their opponent at the right time. You see this with most fighting games, like Street Fighter as well, because it's hard to figure out the combos and the proper connection of moves to actually deal a massive amount of damage to your opponent. Again, fighting games aren't the only games that have this. Pokemon, as I mentioned, has depth to it. Once you figure out the typing, the game doesn't have to tell you, hey, use this move because it's more effective. And sometimes you don't want to use that move because you need to up your stats before you use the move so it's the most effective. Or you just need to defend because you know something big's coming up and that the opponent's Pokemon is faster. This makes the game hard and allows the player to spend hours trying to master it. Last but not least, we need to reward the player. Believe it or not, our brains are very easy to please. Positive reinforcement makes us happy, and we can condition players also as well to see what is good and bad in our game. Final Fantasy, for example, when you level up, you hear a little tune. The tune is in a major key, and our brain says, oh, that means happy. That means I did something good. Yay. And our brain then releases serotonin and dopamine. In Call of Duty, if you get first place, you think that your brain should automatically think, I was the best out of all these players. And that should make you happy, right? Your brain likes to think that it's good. This also works when solving puzzles. When you solve a puzzle, you think that puzzle was hard, I'm smart for having solved that puzzle, and your brain rewards you a little bit for positive encouragement that was given. Our brains are actually so easy to reward that breaking a block in Minecraft releases dopamine and makes our brains happy. Something as simple as breaking a block can reward a player. Maybe not as much as leveling up or beating a boss, but it still gives us some kind of reward. Now, we also don't want to reward the player too much because then it gets boring, right? So we always want to find a balance, and that's where it can be a little bit difficult sometimes. Now, in summary, game design is the creation of games in the most basic sense, creating a rule set, having an art style, and building around some game mechanic, right? Three main principles that we use to make games are having a core game mechanic, rewarding the player, and making a game easy to learn and hard to master. That's it for this lecture. We'll see you next time.